Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Mindful Moments, a space where we pause, breathe, and embrace the present moment. I'm Bhupinder Sandhu, your host. Every Thursday, we bring you inspiring stories which can uplift your mind and make your soul shine in its true colors. The stories which connects to us, which resonates with all of us, the story of common people, common problems, story of pain to gain, stories to inspire each other because together we are much stronger than being alone. So today I have a guest. He has his own story, a very inspiring story through his struggles. Even still, he's going through his struggles, but he is a beacon of hope. He's inspiring other as he's fighting with his own problems. Someone who has faced depression, infertility, and addiction, but he's head of Written World, a listening volunteer for Samaritan's charity, and he is a campaigner for mental health and suicide prevention. He started a campaign called Share the Weight. Very interesting campaign. I've spoken to him in detail about this. Today we're going to talk with Andy. Andy Baines-Vosper is the campaigner for mental health and suicide prevention through his campaign called Share the Weight, an inspiring journey, inspiring story that we all can relate. So, without any further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest for today, Andy. Welcome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, let's take a deep breath and dive into your story, Andy. We'll start with Share the Weight. Tell our audience what Share the Weight is all about. What does it mean by sharing the weight?
So, Share the Weight is something I started last year and basically involves me asking people for help to share the weight on my shoulders. And the weight on my shoulders is represented by a big red bag that weighs 24.7 kilograms. And it represents the weight of life, all the emotional burdens that we carry, the problems in life. There's a saying that suicide is the final collapse under an unbearable weight, and in essence, this is what this weight is. It's that weight that people can't see, that most of us carry around at some point in our lives. And yeah, so what I'm trying to do is ask a million people to help share my weight, to show that we can all ask for help, that there's no burden, no judgment, no stigma. Doesn't make us weak to ask for help, and to bring that weight of life to life, really, in a physical form.
Basically, totally agree with you because today we all have this invisible weight on our minds and it is affecting our mental health. Some people are affected in a small way, some in a bigger way, and some in a drastic way that they take their lives. So there are more than 700,000 suicides in the world every year. So that's a big number. One of 1 in 8 of us are suffering from mental health problem, will suffer from mental health problem, and 1 in 4 are suffering from mental health problems. So that's a great initiative. And you know, like you told me earlier, like 24/7, 24.7, how that came to, and you did a poll as well against 365 as well,
That's
36.5.
correct.
So can
Yes,
you share
yes.
that interesting bit about that one, how 24.7 came into existence?
Yeah, so there's two reasons for the number. First being that obviously what I do it to raise awareness of Samaritans, and it all started. The campaign really started after I ran London Marathon in 2024 with my bag, to raise awareness of Samaritans, and it also represents the weight that we carry 24/7. And yes, when I originally decided this idea of carrying my bag of worries for last year's marathon, it was a choice of two weights. One was 24.7 for the weight we carry 24/7, and Samaritan's being open 24/7. And the other weight was going to be 36.5 kilos for carrying the weight 365 days of the year, and Samaritan's being open 365 days of the year. And so I put it out on social media for people to vote which one I should do, and I'm very, very thankful, especially over the last year and where I've taken it and what I've done with it, that it came back as 24.7.
And the amount of running you do with it, your niece would be
Yes.
thankful to those people who voted for 24.7.
This is it. It's meant that if it wasn't 24.7, I think Share the Weight wouldn't exist, because, you know, for me it's about asking people to help share it, and I think had it have been heavier, you know, not a lot of people would have wanted to share that weight during a run or during a
It's
walk.
possible as well for some people to lift that sort of weight.
Yeah. Well, this is, I mean, you know, as you know, I'm quite a large chap, and I'd struggle with 36.5 kilos on my shoulders. So yes, it wouldn't have been, it would have been a bit difficult, that one.
No, I can relate with your pain, because when I train for my walks, I put like 10 kilo, 5 kilo each ankle weights, and
Wow.
walk about 10 kilometers, and I can understand the pain that comes with that weight. And people need to understand and relate that if 10 kilos can hurt that much for walking for about 10 kilometers, that's about less than 2 hours. How much it hurts when you carry that invisible weight in your head
Yeah.
24/7. You said 24/7, and I would say it is absolutely right, spot on, because we can't get rid of our worries. We can't put them to side, our mental worries or psychological worries, while we are asleep as well. So that's becoming a big problem. Insomnia is becoming a big problem. I speak to young kids and they're saying like, we're not able to sleep. I didn't sleep well last night. That's very common when I go to colleges and university and talk to these young people. And I find it very hard, because when I was a kid, my parents had to drag us out of the bed. We just slept like a log. So this is a big problem, and your concept and your campaign is very unique as well. This is one of never seen before. This is one of its own kind, and thank you for bringing that out to life, and people can get inspiration from that. So like it's very hard for people to ask for help, right? Especially men.
Yes.
The way we are brought up and we struggle, that's not in our system to ask for help. We always like there to help others. So now you've been doing this campaign for over a year now, right?
So I actually know. So I started Share the Weight in July. So I ran the marathon and had a
Almost
bit of
nearly
time
a year.
off,
Yeah,
and then
well,
July last year. So nearly a year. So yeah, coming up to actually, yeah,
coming
we're
up
in April
here,
now.
right? So you have met, you like mentioned, you have like shared the weight with about more than 1,000 people.
Yeah, so I think I'm 50 away from 1,500 people now have
Amazing, right?
physically shared the weight.
So when you share this weight, there's always a conversation before
Mm.
somebody takes on your weight. What have you have like basically done almost 1,500 conversations. What have you learned? First is I want to know, what have you learned about human nature, about asking for help or sharing somebody else's burden?
Quite a few things. So I think some of the things that stick out are, one is, I think that a lot of the time we don't realize how heavy the burden is that we're carrying. And I think especially I've noticed it in men, is that a lot of the time we don't realize we're carrying it. We don't realize how heavy life has got. And there's been so many times where, you know, I've had men help share the weight and they've run with it or they've walked with it, and then we start the conversation, then we start to talk, and it becomes that moment of connection. And this for me is what it's all about. It's those moments that are so important. And you know, there's been times where I've had men take the weight off of me and they've started talking and they've continued talking and talking, and they've given it back to me, and in that it's almost like a double release, because there's the talking, which is helping release the mental weight, and then they give me the bag back, and that's the physical weight, and it's almost sort of, it's this huge release. But the feedback that I've had is that a lot of the time they didn't even know they wanted to talk, or they needed to talk, or that they had that weight. And it's only in giving the weight back again where they realise actually how heavy that burden would become until they started talking. It's been incredible to see, and I've had some, as I said, like I've had some truly amazing, really heartfelt and very, very deep moments with complete strangers, on this journey. But one of the other things I've found doing it as well is that there's so many incredible people in this world. I've nearly 1,500 conversations, 1,500 stories of life and struggle and heartbreak and of success and all the bits in between, resilience. And I think one of the things that I found is that I don't think we all give ourselves enough credit for how strong and inspiring and just how our stories are so impactful to others. It's, as I said, I've met some incredible people, just random moments through this connection, and heard their stories, and from the people that were struggling to get out of bed in the morning to go and run a 5K because they were in such a low place, but they still got up, they still left the house, they still got to that start line, and then they did that 5K. And for them, it doesn't seem a lot, for them it's just, but for me, I think that's it's where the stories of inspiration are, because that's the struggle that no one sees, the struggle that we have in getting out of bed in the morning, in brushing our teeth, in getting out the front door. Yep. I used to take a lot of inspiration from books and YouTube videos and podcasts. For me, I've now seen that the stories and the inspiration are from you, from me, from the people that are standing next to us in the street. And it's really opened my eyes to just how much weight people are carrying and how amazing we can be at still getting up and doing our thing. And it's there's been quite a few moments on this where I've there's been some emotional moments and conversations.
Yeah, I was coming to that point, right? When we met like a month ago, you shared few stories. Would you like to share one or two stories with the audience so they can relate how relieving or uplifting, I would say, it can be when you just like share your feelings, what you have. I'm going to come to that in detail later because you are the listening volunteer for Samaritans. I'm going to talk about listening in detail when we come to that part. But can you share any few interesting stories like you shared with me?
Yeah, I mean, I've as I said, I've met some incredible people from so many different walks of life and so many different experiences and life stories, and some of the ones that from I've met from someone who recently out of prison, who was struggling just to get by so they could see their son and trying to make amends for what they've for what led them to where they were, and their story was heartbreaking from what led them to be there to then what they were having to go through to try and get their life back on track, and the barriers they were facing. They would keep going. They were showing up. They were doing everything they could. I met one gentleman, and I'll never forget this moment, who we were on a run and he asked to share the weight at a certain point of this run.
Yeah, that was
yes. And when I said to him, is there any reason why you want to share the weight now? He went on to tell me that the place where we were running, his brother had ended his life a few months beforehand in this particular place. And it was the first time he'd been back to this place, and he used to come to this run club a lot. And then since that happened, he hadn't been back. And he wanted to come and share the weight with me and, share the weight past that point as almost a way of honouring his brother and doing something to just to help him as well. And that conversation and that moment and the hug we had afterwards, honestly, you know, as I say, I've got no qualms in saying it got me really emotional. It got
Yeah,
him
this is the
emotional.
thing. These are the stories that say together we are stronger.
Yeah.
So if we don't, like, if people like you don't start these campaigns and don't bring people together and inspire them, they will be still sitting home in the darkness by themselves. So we need more and more campaigns like this so we can inspire. So that's, I always say, there is always a hope at and on the other side.
Yes.
So these are the amazing stories that keep us going. It's like inspiring each other. You are inspiration, even though you're still going through your own problems. We're going to talk about it. So you like openly talk about that you went through addiction, infertility, and depression. So let's talk about like addiction, how addiction came to your life, and then we'll talk about other two bits in the.
Yeah. So I was, I think probably between the age of about 17, 18 maybe, and my mid-20s, unfortunately fell into a bit of the wrong path when it came to drugs. Got really, really addicted to cocaine and I suppose weed as well. I was smoking a lot of that at the time. And it got me into a really, really bad place. Spent thousands. I ended up thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds in debt, and I think it all came to a head one day when my parents, bless them, have been such a support throughout various different things in life, but they'd lent us some money for something, and I ended up spending it on drugs, and it was quite a lot of money, and they needed it back, and obviously I didn't have it, and I told them I had it and I was going to give it back to them, but you know, underneath all this, it wasn't, I'd spent it. And I'll never forget the moment where I was lying in bed in our first flat, and I was in tears on the phone and had to come clean and just say to my mum at the time, this is, you know, where I was. I think that's probably one of the rock bottom moments of that drug addiction phase. And yeah, it happened.
More into it. How, you know, the thing is, like, there's so much going about the drugs and all this adolescence is one of that thing. I'm going to have a special guest in one of those next episodes to talk about adolescence. But you know, the thing is, I want to understand how it all starts. I know it's a journey we start and there's an end and then you crash. You have, you know, where do these teenagers, that's the age, where, how?
I
What's
think,
the how and why?
yeah, I think looking back on it, I didn't realize how much of a problem it was becoming, and I think that applies to a lot of things. I think in life, and you know, we'll come on and talk about the depression side in a minute, but I didn't realize I was there until I was there in that grip of it. And I think it all started because I was young. You know, you're out on weekends, you know, you might have a joint, or you might, you know, go to a pub and have
What is the
something there.
psyche? I just want to understand. You want to do it, but why? What is the thought process behind it? Why?
For me, I think at the time it was, I'll probably say it was around fitting in, you know, the circle of people you're around and you want to fit in. And, you know, because there was one point in my life where I would never have touched anything. And it's so easy. And I didn't realize how easy it to go to someone that you know, wouldn't have touched it to all of us hadn't been in a grip of it. And it's that fitting in, it's that wanting to be part of something. It's that, you know, sort of, oh, I'll be all right, I'll have a bit here, I'll have a bit there, and sort of in the scene you're in and the people that you're with. Not saying it was the people, you know, it was just,
without even realizing you're becoming an addict. So it's just like
this is it. You
start
don't
like
really,
and then before you even realize that you are becoming
mm,
an addict of it, and then you, when you hit rock bottom, you realize that, and some people like yourself are lucky that they have support, like you mentioned that you had parents to support, but some people, they're not fortunate enough, they have that close net support system that
yeah,
can help them in their low time, and that's it. where the trouble starts. They just try to come out, but then they no support, and then they just go back into that same cycle again.
Yeah, and I think even and I think the worst thing is that even at the time I'd been hiding it for a long time and trying to balance everything, and it just wasn't working. Looking back on it now, it was a car. It was. I thought I was balancing it, but I wasn't, and I can clearly see that. It took, as I said, it'd been a few years before that big crash happened. And you hide it, you try and tell yourself that you're okay and that you're not addicted, but yeah, it creeps up, and then yeah, unfortunately, it took hold, and I let it take hold, and it took a while to recover from, as I said, there was that sort of, I think, admitting it and accepting it and owning it, but it was yeah, looking back, it's probably definitely a very, 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 very low point in my life. Um, yeah.
You like now, how important is the support system? Really balanced, reliable support system if you are in that addiction phase of your life.
I think having that right support around you, it can be life saving. It can be, and having people that having people that are there to listen to you and to help you. And I think it's the whole knowing you're not on your own. Because we all struggle, and I think this is the thing as well, is just because, for example, that I told them didn't mean that I stopped doing it. It just meant that was the turning point, and the sort of the low of it. But having people or an organizer, whoever that is, it's life saving, because ultimately the worst part is feeling that you're on your own, and that you've got no one to be there for you, and you can't tell anybody. And even when I had people that I could have told, I still felt on my own with it, and that applies to a lot of things in life. And having that support is vital. It's life saving, and yeah, we need it. As going back to that whole thing, together we are
Like
stronger.
some people have the support system, but they are afraid to ask or go and openly tell about that. I have this problem. Can you help? So, what
Mm.
would you say to people like that? There's no shame in asking for help.
The,
Ask
there's
why before it's too late.
Yeah, ask before it's too late. I think that's been some of my biggest mistakes I've ever made in life, is asking for help when I had no choice. And I think that is the fundamental difference. When I look back at the drug addiction, the only reason why I ended up asking for help was because I was backed into a corner, and I couldn't do anything. I had to. There was nowhere else I could go with it. What I should have done is reached out for help a lot sooner, because then I wouldn't have got to that point. The same things, and I think we'll probably come on to it in a bit, but, where I'm at the moment with depression, I've been I've had depression before for long periods of time. The difference, I think, between where I am now and where I was when I first got hit really bad with it, is that I didn't ask for help until I was at a point where I was desperate for it. Whereas now I recognize the signs and think, actually, I need to ask for help, because I don't want to be at that point again. And it's, and sometimes I get it's not easy reaching out to you, especially friends and family. There's the fear of judgment, the fear of, what people might say, what people might do. But there's always someone that can listen, as we said about Samaritans and other organisations. Depending on what it is, it might be gambling, it might be drugs, it might be infertility, but there's always someone, and you've got to start somewhere. And I think sometimes just by saying I need a bit of help, it takes, it might not change the circumstance, but you feel so much less alone, and that's part of that weight gone, and it makes it a bit easier to carry the rest after that.
Yeah, because I saw your post yesterday, I think, and where
Yes.
you said something is back. I'm not. Uh, what did you going to say about? Then you showed your depression tablets. So hey, I want to tell everybody who's listening to us, is just like depression can come back. It there's a relapse in it. Like Andy's been talking about this and on this journey for over a year, and he's very open, and we should be thankful that is there's no shame in sharing your story and raising your hand up and say, "Here I am. This is my problem." And they are people who are willing to help. We have family, we have friends, we are social animals, so we have this support system. But first, we have to raise our hand and admit that there's a problem, I need help. And you have been advocate for mental health awareness and suicide prevention, and you've been on this incredible journey for last 365 days. I want to tell listeners that depression is a periodic thing. We have to be very vigilant about it. We have to be very mindful about it. So imagine like if people like Andy who've been on this journey, who are out every single day sharing their story, listening to other people, helping other people, inspiring other people, if it can come back to people like Andy, it can come back to anybody. So we have to be mindful of it every single day. We need to keep building those mind muscles that it don't come back to us. So so you think this is the one big reason before behind you becoming so passionate and advocate about this journey, inspiring people about this thing?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I think people sometimes think that our mental health is very linear. That we either go up or we go down. But the fact is that it changes minute by minute, hour by hour, and it can go up, it can go down, it can stay the same. But it changes all the time. And without a doubt. So yes, so I put a post for those not seen it yesterday on Instagram and LinkedIn about the fact that I'm now back on antidepressants, and I think the reason why I did that is because I think it's great that we share our successes, but it's also the things that aren't necessarily going well that I think have such an impact. And yes, as you said, I do a lot of this stuff. I work in the field of mental health and suicide prevention. In my spare time, I campaign for it. But it can happen to anybody. And over the last, I think probably maybe 3, maybe a bit longer months, I think I've been slipping. And what I'm at the point of is that I do things for my health and well-being. I do a lot of exercise. I do a lot of running. I'm out every weekend with people and sort of trying to socialize and things like that. But what I'm doing at the moment isn't working. It's not working, and I've been feeling lower and lower, and especially the times where I'm on my own, been feeling periods of sadness and very numb and quite low. And I think that's why I also struggled with marathon training this year. Whereas last year I struggled, but it wasn't anywhere near as bad, is because the times where I'm running on my own for those long periods of time, when you're feeling low, when you're feeling
Because body,
depressed.
like your mind and body works together. They are not two different entities, right?
Yeah,
If you're not feeling well up there, your body will shrink. It will
this
just
is it.
if there's a pain in your body, your mind will be low. So they are just like mirror
Yeah.
reflection of each other.
And I think being in my head for, when you're out training for 3 or 4 hours and you're alone, and you're already feeling quite low, it affects my, as you said, mind, body. It just doesn't connect properly. And that's why, and again, my wife's definitely started to notice, and a few of my friends and family say to me quite often, "Are you okay? You sure you're okay?" And it got to the point where I thought, actually, no, I'm not, and I need that bit of extra support. And for me, taking antidepressants, if that's what my body needs right now, and as I said, I've taken them before, and they're not. I don't intend to use them forever, but I need them now because ultimately.
Temporary help.
Say again.
It's a temporary help. It's just like if your arm is broke, you have a fracture on your arm. You
Yes.
put a plaster. These are like temporary support system to heal you and give you that headspace that you can work more on your mental health.
Yes, it's like they help for me anyway. And again, this is certainly isn't medical advice for anybody listening,
No,
but
no,
for
no. We're
me,
not here to give
they,
any medical advice. That's fine. Sharing our stories from our own personal experience. Like I'm a mindfulness coach, and what I tell my students, my clients, my patients is we can do as much as physical activities. Like people say yoga is good. Fine, yoga is good. Running is good. Walking is good. I do lot of walking. But then we need to connect with our inner self. And
Mm,
the only way to connect with our inner self is our breath. If you take a couple of deep breaths throughout your day, it will help because when we are inhaling, we are doing belly breathing, we are relaxing our nervous system because whatever we breathe, 20% of the oxygen goes to our brain. So it helps our cognitive functions as well.
mm,
So we are doing everything else, but in 21st century, people have forgotten how to breathe properly. So if we start working on our breathing and learn how to breathe properly, I think that's a good starting point and it can help.
yeah,
Has helped people I have worked with personally. So anybody going through these sort of mental health problems, it's very simple. You can do it anywhere, anytime you're standing in a queue in Tesco's. Focus on your breath rather than getting irritated. Oh, it's a long queue. The person on the till is too slow. They're taking too long to pay because some people come with 20 million coins to pay, and then we just get irritated while the cashier is counting. No, when he's counting, give that moment to yourself. Focus on your breath. You don't need to close your eyes. With your eyes open, you can focus on your breath. Take few deep breaths. Give your mind and body both a gift of your attention, your presence. And as you build this muscle, these problems of stress, anxiety, depression, burnout slowly goes out of your system. When you are deep breathing, stress, anxiety, depression can't sit in your system. They are polar opposite. They only one can be in your body.
I love that.
Yes,
I
so
love that.
breathing
And I,
is one thing that will help. So that's quite a journey, right? And hats off to you, and you're still going. And we're gonna do one in Blue Water soon. Definitely haven't forgotten. So when I'm back from my London to Brighton walk
uh,
on Easter weekend, we'll definitely go share the weight in Blue Water. So Blue Water, we are coming.
love that.
So now coming to the listening volunteer, right?
Mm,
When I did my London to Cardiff walk last December, on Christmas Day, I dedicated that day's walk to people who spent their Christmas by themselves, and there are 5.8 million people in United Kingdom only that spent their Christmas alone. So loneliness is become has be, they were physically lonely, but there are multiple, like this 5.8, they were lonely, physically lonely on Christmas, but there are many more people who are lonely living with friends, family. They're still lonely because we have two lives. One, we communicate, then there's an inner us, right? We have two personality, and people are afraid of sharing the true essence of themselves, what they want to share, because they are scared that other people won't trust, they won't listen, because other person is in a rush as well. Nobody has got time for each other, right? So you are a listening volunteer for Samaritans, and what is one thing, the common denominator among all those people you talk to?
oh, that's a good question. Do you know what? I think my answer to that would probably be I don't think there's one thing that links every one of those people in terms of them, but I think the need to be heard and not judged is probably the common denominator. It's that need to have a space where you can talk and be heard and be listened to without fear of judgment, without someone giving advice, without it's just to be able to say how you're feeling. And I think that's probably what links every single person that contacts Samaritan, is that we've all got this need to be heard. We've all got this need to have a safe space where we can just say how we're feeling, and that's what we do at Samaritans. Is we give that space for people just to be and to talk about whatever's going on for them, regardless of who they are, what's going on. They won't be judged, they won't be given advice, we won't tell them what to do. We will just be there to listen. And I think a lot of people that I've spoken to passing Samaritans are sort of listening, or
Yeah, that's very underrated thing, listening. But
yeah,
I can share one of the stories, right? I worked with one of big companies in the US over the lockdown online. I just gave them like mindfulness session. And last year, their CEO, they came to UK and they PA messaged me, emailed me like, oh, XYZ is coming. He want to see you in person. I'm saying he, but it can be he or she. So I'm just keeping it. So I said, fine. I booked a half day session with them. So in half day session, it's about four. We were together. We had lunch and we started in the morning, 9 o'clock until lunch. Out of those 4 hours, 3 hours and 45 minutes, the other person spoke, and I was just listening. I was just there. Yes, okay. I didn't say one complete sentence in those 4 hours. And after that, we had lunch, and that person thanked me just like, I don't know what I've done for them. And I'm like, this is how much, because when you're at top, people at the top, especially, we can all relate. It's with everybody. But when somebody's that, they have to be very careful. The trust factor with them is very minimal. Then they can't share what they feel. So they hide everything, and the pressure of the job don't give them the time and the space to share what they feel. So they wanted somebody like me to share what was suppressed in there for last God knows how many years. And that person cried for a good half an hour.
yeah.
That was a relief, like after just all the release and all that. They were crying for half an hour, and I didn't stop. I just let them cry. So this is a sort of the space sometimes people need. They
Yeah.
don't need any help. They don't need any advice. They need that safe space, like you mentioned, to just release that whatever is stored, the negativity, the pressure, those unwanted feelings that are in the system, just to come out.
It's so one of the things we liken it to, and I think this holds true, and both in our personal lives and our professional lives, and just us as people. When we're in that state of crisis, when everything feels like we just can't keep going, and we're in a real crisis, our heads are going round and round and round and round, and we sort of liken it to a bit like a tumble dryer, where all these thoughts, these feelings, these emotions, it just feels so overwhelming and they won't stop, and it's just going round and round, and you end up in crisis. And like we do Samaritans, is we give people that opportunity to pause and to open up that tumble dryer, just to stop it turning for a while, and unpack the clothes and fold them into a nice neat, that's it, and just fold them into a nice neat pile. The clothes are still there, just like our problems. Me telling you about how I'm feeling at the moment isn't gonna, if I'm worried about money, for example, if I told you that I'm worried about money, my money problems are still going to be there after I told you. You're not going to, take my money problems away. But just being able to say, this is how I'm feeling about it, and it's making me worry about this, and it's making me worry about this, and then I'm worried about this and that. It gives you a chance to get all of this out and fold it into nice, neat piles and go, okay, so what's the biggest, out of all of these piles of clothes that you've taken out, what's the biggest pile that you want to work on? So tell me about that. And it's incredible. Some of the most rewarding conversations I have as a Samaritan's listener is very similar to exactly as you described. It might be that someone calls and it's in that real crisis point, and by giving them that space and that time, a lot of the time we've got the solutions to our own lives. What I will always say is I'm the last person to be giving anybody life advice. I've got enough things in my life that I need advice on, so I'm not going to give other people advice. But we can give people the space and the time. And a lot of the time, once you pause that tumble dryer, it gives you time to actually think about the next steps and go, okay, so out of all of these thoughts and emotions and the situations in my life, this is my biggest concern right now. Okay, so what do we think we can do about that? What are the possibilities? What options do you think you've got? I could do this or I could do that. And slowly and surely, once people can pause that process, it's incredible. The power of listening, I think, is still so underrated even now, and it is still so powerful.
I run a class for mindful listening. In the sessions I do, there is a dedicated session where we talk about mindful listening, because we are there not listening. We are always ready to answer. Somebody saying, we are just like, oh, he said that, we need to ask this, we need to say that. We are ready. If somebody's telling something about their life, we are ready with our own story. We're not interested in their story. We're just like ready. We need that space, the breather in between the other person, and we just start, oh, I go through, I go through. So we start with our own stories. We don't. So mindful listening is one of the things I talk about. And guys, all the listeners, if you have got that thing in your mind and you think you need to speak to somebody, Samaritans is your go-to place. Search them online. They're 24/7, 365 throughout the year. So now you know where to go. So Andy, before we go conclude this today's live, why is it so hard for many people to ask for help and open up, even they get a safe space? Like now Samaritans is a safe space. There are so many other charities, they provide safe space, but still people don't want to open up. What do you think, in brief, like two sentences, what is the reason you think? What are people scared of?
I think scared of failing, to admit that, that I think people feel that they're a failure if they ask for help. And I think that's one of the biggest changes that we need to make, is that by asking for help isn't failing, it's a strength, and it means you don't want to fail. I think there's for example, when I put that post out about my antidepressants, I had someone message me and said, I'm so glad you put that there, because I've been feeling like a failure because I've had a dip recently and I've done so much to get myself up where I was. And it was in that sentence I felt like a failure, and that stopped them from asking for help. And I think it's that fear of, you might have failed, or you're not strong enough. Whereas asking for help is one of the strongest things we can do, and it's refusing to admit defeat. And I think it's spinning the narrative that is a big thing.
Amazing. Thank you, Andy. So, a message before we conclude this session to the audience that you want people to take away from your personal journey, from your struggles, from your recovery, all that journey you have been through. A message for the audience.
I think that just the weight of life can be heavy. It can be so heavy, and it can be relentless. And for those that are struggling with that weight, for those that are listening to this, that have, identified with anything that I've said, just to know that you're not alone, and that there are people out, and you might not be ready today to talk, you might not be ready tomorrow, but when you are, there are people that care, that are there for you, and that have been there and know how hard it is. And yeah, just to know. And also that Samaritans are there on 116 123 if you need someone 24/7. But yeah, don't do it alone. We are so much stronger together. It's probably my message.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast and sharing your story and inspiring so many others. And anybody who want to join your mission, join your campaign of Share the Weight, how can they join you?
So yeah, if you follow me, so predominantly on Instagram at share the weight 24/7, and I'm always looking for people to go for walks with, to go for runs with, just to connect with, to help share my weight. And again, it's not about the actual physical sharing; it's just a connection. So for those that might not want to carry a 24.7 kilogram bag, I get it. But yeah, always open for a walk and a talk, and just that bit of connection. So yeah, have a look, and if anybody wants to carry it,
Amazing. All right, Andy. Thank you so much for sharing your story and coming on the podcast and giving your valuable time to us. Thank you so much, Andy.
thank you, really appreciated.
Yes, but what an inspirational story. Person who is struggling himself with depression, going through so much in his own life, and still getting up every single day, going out, inspiring people that mental health problems are curable. There is a hope end of the tunnel. So today's message is pick up that phone, pick up those trainers, put them on, go for a walk, take a deep breath, make that phone call, or write a letter, or write a letter for yourself. Just take whatever is sitting in your system, take it out. Talk to yourself in the mirror. If you don't have anybody to talk to, just talk to yourself in the mirror. Write it down what you feel. Just take it out. Which is not helping you should not be in your system. And this story is one inspirational story, and I will be back next week with another story to inspire all of us. Till then, goodbye. One life, live it, but here and now. Thank you, guys.